because all of this will apply to your group project. So, if you notice in the background, I have that bedroom that we've been working on all semester. The only thing is, I made sure and get rid of all those layouts that we had created and just some extra drawings that were around the edges. So all I have left is the floor plan with the text and the dimensions, and I kept the car just for fun. But I'm going to be using this as an example to XREF this into another drawing. In your assignment, you're going to be XREFing your midterm. So you would want to be using that for your assignment, but to follow along with this lecture, you can just bring up this drawing. Notice as well, I also have a brand new drawing. There is nothing in it yet. And I have my units set down here to architectural. Another thing that I want to do with this new drawing is to set that basically I'm the owner. So I'm going to go to the A and I'm going to go to utilities, and under drawing properties at the top, when I click that, I can just put in, basically who I am. So you can put your name in for the author. You can either put your full name, your initials, or like I did with an initial and my last name. And then I'm going to hit OK. The reason I'm doing that is because we're going to be inserting our title block with our attributes into the paper space, and I just want to make sure that it automatically puts in the owner in that field that we created. So now that I've done that, what I need to do is actually XREF my drawing into here. So I'm going to go up to Insert, which it looks like it's already there, and I'm going to go to Attach. I'm also going to make sure that I'm on layer 0, and yes, I am. Because this is a brand new drawing with no other layers, that's kind of a default. But going to Insert and going to Attach, I'm actually going to get the drawing that is in the background, which is my new example of the bedroom. Now, the reason that I did new is so that I don't mess up the old one. So you're going to be doing the same thing with your midterm. You're just going to be resaving it as a new midterm, so you don't lose the original. Once I get to this box, I just need to double check everything. Yes, I want it as an attachment. The scale, I could deselect and just make sure it comes in 1, 1, which I basically want to do. I can specify my insertion point. I want to make sure it's a relative path. And yes, I do want to make sure that this comes in the right scale of inches and not something like meters. So I'm going to hit OK. When I do that, it comes in pretty close. In fact, I can't even see the entire drawing. I could put in 0, 0, or I could just click. I notice it is asking me for the rotation. So don't forget to make sure to hit enter at this point or put 0 in, because if your cursor's somewhere like this, it will come in at that angle if you click with your cursor. So I'm going to hit enter for 0. And because I did not have it set the scale, it came in at the correct scale. Otherwise, it would ask me that. So if you have that still selected, it will still ask you for the scale that you want. And notice it's a little faded compared to the original. Notice the difference. This one's a very sharp, bright, and this one's faded a little bit. The way that we can change that is up under here, under Reference, on the XREF fading. I said in your assignment to give it a specific value. I don't remember what that was, but I have it set at 30. If I set it higher, it will fade more and more into the background. So I still want to be able to see it clearly. So I have that set to 30. Then the next thing I want to do is actually create some layouts. Now normally we would create a viewport layer and then go to our layout tab. But I know, because my title block has a viewport layer, that I'm basically just going to create my layout and then change my viewport to be on that layer when it appears, because I can't put my title block in until I get to Paperspace. So I'm going to go to layout 1, and when I do that, it brings it in with a viewport that should be on layer 0 because that's the layer I was on. I'll change that layer later. And I obviously have that grid in the background that I don't really care. If I am outside of my viewport, I'm basically in paper space. It's like looking at a house and I'm looking through a window, which is the viewport, and looking inside to what is in my model space, which is back here. Whatever I've created in model space, I can view through my window on my paper. So on my paper, if I want to actually go inside to my model space, I can do it 2 ways. One, I can go down to the model tab and actually start working in the drawing. I can, erase something. Ooh, notice it's an XREF, so I can't erase it here. But I can make any adjustments here and it'll show up in my layout. I'm going to go over that XREF and how we edit that in just a little bit. But going back to the layout, when I double click inside, I'm actually in that model space. In fact, I can zoom in and out, which will change the scale of that viewport, and I can make any adjustments in here as well. I also can turn off that grid, which is exactly what I wanted to do. But now I need to set it to the scale that I want it to show the drawing. So in your assignment, you're going to have different viewports at different scales and on different sizes of sheets of paper. So the first thing I want to do is set this scale. Right now it's at a very weird scale down here at the bottom. So I'm going to hit my down arrow and I'm going to go and set it to 1/8 of an inch. Notice it barely even moved, but it is set to that. So as an example, if I was in like this and then went down to set it to 1/8, you would see it happen, a little bit more clearly like that. So obviously it was really close to that scale. Once I do that, I do want to make sure that basically is everything where I want it. Do I want this to be more in the center? Notice I'm just using the pan and not the zoom. Do I want the car and plant to show? I can move it while I'm in there if it doesn't come in all clearly or if it doesn't show exactly what I want. But as soon as I zoom in and out like this, it will change that viewport scale. So just make sure that you understand that if you zoom in and out while you're inside here. So I am going to make sure and go down here and reset it to 1/8 of an inch, barely moved, and I'm going to lock it. That way, if I try to zoom in and out, notice I'm now zooming in and out of the paper space. I'm not zooming in and out of that viewport. Now I'm going to double click out of that to make sure I am back in paper space. And what I need to do next is I need to set up my page. So I'm going to go down here where it says Layout 1, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to rename it to what I want it to say, which in this case I want it to say A size. I believe in your assignment you put a little bit more information here, but I'm going to call this the A size because I'm going to use this for an A size sheet. Normally we would name it what the sheet name is actually called. So now I need to set it to an A size sheet. To do that, I can either right click here and go to Page Setup Manager, or hopefully you remember the other ways to get to Page Setup Manager. So getting out of that, another way would be to go to the Output tab here at the top and go to Page Setup Manager here, or the third way, at least the other way that I remember, is to go to Print and I hover, and then Page Setup is right here. They all three will get you to the same thing. So if I click it here, it brings up this box. Another thing you need to realize is you have to be in the layout that you want to change when you do this. Now, I only have one, so it's not going to matter. But notice what I have down here. It actually tells me what it's set for right now, which is 8.5 by 11, which happens to be an A size sheet. but it doesn't have anything for the plotter or the description or anything like that. So I'm going to go over here and hit modify, and it brings up the page setup pop-up box, which looks, by the way, exactly like the print one. So what I need to do first is name that plotter, because if I don't, I'm not going to have very much to pick from. Oh, I say that, and then I see all these options down here. But once I set up my printer, it'll basically show me what I can use for my paper size. So I'm going to go under here and I'm going to select the Microsoft Document Writer. You also can select your own printer for this assignment. But I'm going to select this, and then notice the paper size actually did change. It's really close to 8.5 by 11, but it's actually 8.5 by 10.8. So I am going to go under here and set it to basically the letter size. It changes in my preview here to show 8.5 by 11. And then I need to look at my other options. One is my plot area. Well, I want to print this sheet of paper that I have in the background, my paper space, which is my layout. So that is what I want to make sure is selected. Yes, I do have these other options. I can select what is displayed, which would basically select the same thing because I'm looking at the entire paper, or the extents of my drawing, or I can select a little window and just select a portion of what I can see. So there are other options, but I will say that, yes, most of the time we're going to select just the layout, especially if we're in paper space. If we need to adjust the origin of our plot, this is where we would do it. Or maybe we need to center the plot because we're only selecting a small portion and we want it centered on the piece of paper. That is an option, but I don't need to do anything for this one. This right here, the plot scale, is vitally important. You never, ever, 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 ever change it from 1 to 1 unless you are just trying to look at like a draft drawing that you've created and you want it to fit on the piece of paper that you have. Then you would click here and you would go you would go up to where it says custom, and then fit to paper will be one of those that you can select. But other than that, you want it to print the scale that you have it on the piece of paper. Otherwise, nothing will be to scale. You will have a very, very distorted drawing. So that is 99.9% of the time never changed. Over here on the plot style table, we do have several options. Most companies create their own plot style. I do have one for mine. So if I was wanting to use that, I would select it right here. AutoCAD comes with its own called ACAD, and it will show all the colors. But also they have a grayscale, which basically just means it's going to be shades of gray. That's almost never selected, to be honest. Monochrome is selected quite frequently because it's basically black or white. Going down under here, this is where you would select the quality. Do you want it normal? Do you just want to select, just a preview for yourself or a draft copy, just so you can see what you're working on, maybe off to the side? That's a good option because it takes less ink and less harm on your printer. But if you need a presentation, that is where you would select it right here. Maximum presentation, most of the time, are pretty much the same. But just for a normal one, obviously you would select normal, right? But that is how you can set the quality of it. These other options, I almost never need to change unless I need to make a transparency, and then I would click this one. And then the drawing orientation, do you want it portrait or do you want it landscape? Obviously in this case, you can see that my piece of paper is landscape, so I am going to make sure that's selected. And I could hit preview, and normally I would, but because I know in the background it's not quite ready, I don't have a title block or anything, I'm just going to hit OK. And then I'm going to hit close. So even though it was on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, now it's more set for what I need to print. So now that I have that set, I need to insert my title block. So I'm going to go back to the Insert tab, and I'm going to go to Insert, and I'm going to go to Blocks from Libraries, and this is where you would actually find your title block that you've created. I do know that I've recently used it, so I'm just going to click it from my recent ones, because notice the ones that you've used recently will come up. I'm going to click that, and then notice as soon as I bring my cursor away, it has it at my cursor. I can see the lines for it already. So I'm going to actually zoom in to this corner, and I'm going to click this very corner. I don't have to be exact, but it is pretty cool to have it exact. And then notice my attributes will ask me, okay, what do you want these values to be? If I don't need to change anything, then I can just leave it as it is. But look here, I do need to change this date. So let's say that I created this on April Fool's Day. I need to change that date. The drawn by is what I had set in the properties. If I need to change the checked by or the project name, I could do that just by hitting over here on the side and changing those values. But I'm just going to hit OK. As soon as I do that, let me get this out of the way, it's in there, so I just zoom out and I can see it. Now, obviously, it's larger than my piece of paper because the title block we created was for 11 by 17. But that's okay because I'm just going to scale that down and have it fit on my piece of paper. Right now, this title block will not show because it has to be on the white sheet of paper to actually show when I print. But now that I have this in here, let's go see if the layers came with it. So when I go under layer properties, these are all the layers that are kind of faded out for the drawing that I had XREF'd in. So that's why they're faded in the background. But all those layers came in with their line weights and all the values. These are the layers that came in with the title block. And my viewport did come in there because I had a viewport layer. It is set to no plot. So now I can actually use any of these 4 layers or any of the other layers that you created in your title block template or your title block. So I'm going to make this current, and I'm going to get out of there, but I am going to change this, my viewport, from layer 0 now to layer viewport. So now that's set to go, and it won't print, which is exactly what I want. Ooh, but what I did need to create is actually a new layer. You might already have this layer, so you wouldn't need to create it, but I need to create a layer for my title because I'm going to bring some titles in. I'm going to make sure that's not no plot so that it will plot. I'm going to change the color to be cyan in this case, and I'm going to make it current. Then I'm going to get out of my layers, and I want to bring in the title block from the tool palette, which I happen to already have open on the side. If yours is not open, just remember it's under the View tab at the top, and you click where it says Tool Palettes. So on the tool palette, I'm going to go and get the drawing title Imperior. So once I click that, I don't even have to hold down my mouse. I'm going to put that title basically underneath my floor plan. And this is kind of how close do I want it? How far away do I want it? I like to put it so the actual number is outside of the viewing of this drawing, but that's kind of a personal preference. But now I need to change the values for these things. So I'm going to double click, and it brings up this enhanced attribute editor. So now I can change the view title to say floor plan, because that's what it's referencing. But I also need to change the text. It's coming in at Tahoma. So I'm going to click down and I'm going to select my stylus, which you should have selected or created already with your title block, although I think it's named something different. And then did you happen to notice the justification that was before I changed it? That is something that I usually just kind of keep in mind because it moves it underneath the line as soon as I change the text. I do believe it was bottom left. Yeah, bottom left. So then it puts it right back into place. Now I need to work on these other two attributes. So I'm going to go to attribute and I'm going to select basically the number 1. I don't need to change the value, but I need it to match my text font. So I'm going to go to the text options. I'm going to notice the justification is middle center. I'm going to change it from Tahoma to be my stylus. Notice the number moved down. So I do need to change the justification to be middle center, and it moves it right back into place. And now I need to change the scale. So I'm going to go to attribute. I'm going to hit the scale. I do need to change this value to be 1/8 of an inch equals 1 foot and 0 inches. And I do need to change the text option to also be the same. Justification is top right. So I'm going to go under the text style, select the same one, and then I'm going to make sure that I have this set to top right. Now all of my text is good to go and it says what it's supposed to. So I'm going to hit OK. And then I pull out my line so that it's totally underneath my drawing. If you have it way back here, it just doesn't work and it looks silly. So make sure and pull it out so it is as long as your drawing. That way they know that everything above that applies to this title. Now I have my title, I have my viewport, I have my drawing set, I have my title block in, but look what is missing. My logo or my ACC is missing from my title block. This most often than not will happen to you. So you go under the insert, you go where it says reference, and you go to the corner and hit that arrow for external references. This will come up and your AC logo in this case is not found. So I click here and then I right click within there and I say select new path. It then will allow you to find in your browser where that is. I've done this so often that it knows kind of where it is already. So I select it and then I say open and it basically puts it into place. I close this box and it's there. Notice there is a frame around it. Hopefully you remember how to change that. It's to go to image frame and I do have to type that. So I start it with IM. And even though it says 0, I'm going to change it to 1 and hit enter. Then I'm going to repeat the command and then hit 0 and then enter. And that frame is gone from around there. It's not as noticeable without the white background, but it was a black line. So now that I have all the parameters set that I want for my first sheet, except for the fact that the title block's not scaled down, I'm going to create the second sheet. So I'm going to go to layout 2 and I'm basically going to say delete. It'll ask me, do you really want to do that? Yes, I do. And it's gone. But now I can create all the ones that I want to. So from the A size, I'm going to right click. I'm going to say move or copy. It'll bring up this. I do want to create a copy of the A size. And I always select move to end because it'll put it before it if I don't. And then I'm going to say OK. I now have an A size 2 at the bottom. It's basically the same as the A size 1. Makes sense, right? Because it created a copy. I'm going to now right click and I'm going to rename this one to say B size because that's what you're going to be doing in your assignment. is you're going to be creating A, B, C, and D. So for the B size, I need it to be the B size sheet, right? So in this case, I'm going to right click and do the same thing. Go to Page Setup Manager. It brings up this, and this is where I was telling you before, you cannot actually change A. Notice if I select A, I cannot modify it. I can create a new one and I can set it current, but I can't change it. So you do have to be on the one that you want to modify in order to modify it. So I'm going to make sure it's on B. I'm going to go to Modify. It brings up the same box, and the first thing I need to do is change the printer plotter. So in this case, I do want it to go to a PDF. So I'm going to select Drawing to PDF. Then it'll bring up the different paper sizes that I can use. It defaulted to the ANSI Full Bleed A. Well, I don't really need that one. I need a B size. So I'm going to hit the down, and I'm going to actually select the ANSI Full Bleed B. And if I select the 17 by 11, it's already in the landscape view. So that's what I select. This is set, and all the other parameters are already set because I set them for the first one. So I don't need to make any more adjustments. I just have to hit OK. But let's actually see what it would look like from this right here. When I hit Preview, this is what it would look like. Here's my B size sheet. Here's my title block. Notice it's the wrong number. And I have my drawing way over here in the corner. Okay, so obviously that's not perfected yet. But I'm just going to right click and hit Exit. But I am going to hit OK. When I do that, it changes it in the background to the B size sheet, and I can hit Close. Now I can go in and make those other changes. I can select this, my title block, and change it from 1 to 2. Kind of makes sense, right? Nothing else needs to change. I need the same date. Maybe I needed it checked by someone else. But for this one, it's still going to show the floor plan. Otherwise, I would change what the sheet name is called. But in this case, I don't need to. So now I've got that set, but this needs to be a different scale. So in your assignment, I believe you have the B size sheet for 3/16 of an inch for your viewport. So the first thing I'm going to do is select my viewport, go down here, and I'm going to unlock it because right now it will not let me change the size. So I'm going to unlock it. Then it'll let me pick from a different viewport scale. So I'm going to select 3/16, and yes, it got bigger. But did you also see what else happened while it was getting bigger? I can see text and dimensions. Now, yes, I can't see the entire thing. So you have several ways of doing that. You can either pull your grips, you can double click within here and maybe move it into position, which is exactly what I just did. And then I'm going to double click without of it. Double click out of the viewport. But let's move it into position. So if I click it again and select the middle grip, I can move it maybe in the center of the page, like so. It is set at the scale I want, so I'm going to lock it so that I don't accidentally zoom in and out of there. Hitting Escape, notice what appeared, which didn't appear on the A size sheet. So if I go to A, I do not have any text, I do not have any dimensions, but if I go to B size, I have those. The reason is because these were set to show for 3/16 of an inch. So now they're appearing just like they should. Let me show what I'm talking about. If I actually go to this sheet, which is the new example bedroom, this is that sheet. Notice if I hover, there is an actual scale or annotation scale applied to that. I can tell because of that little icon, the little white triangle. So when I click that, it tells me the annotation scale is for 1/4 inch. That's why that dimension did not show up in that viewport. So hitting escape, if I go to this one, which did show up in that viewport, I have two annotation scales. See the two triangle icons? So when I click that, it tells me annotation scale of 1/4 inch, which happens to be what's set down here at the bottom. But if I click within there and then click this little box, it shows me the other scale, 3/16 of an inch, which is exactly what that other viewport was. So that's why it happened to appear. I could add more if I want, or I could delete them. If I just select one and hit delete, I'm going to keep that exactly the way it is. So I'm going to hit cancel, and I'm going to hit escape. So this one and this one both appeared on that viewport. The others are only set for 1/4 inch. Now notice this one also has two scales. Remember the title also showed. So it's saying annotation scale 1/4 inch, and when I click here, it shows it will show up for a 3/16. That's why that one showed up as well. Notice also something that you may not have realized yourself. This is right now at a 1/4 inch annotation scale. If I change it to be the 3/16 viewport, notice it now shows those same things at the 3/16 inch scale. So this now when I click it will say annotative scale 3/16 instead of the 1/4 inch. It'll bring up basically the one first that it's set to. Hopefully that's not too confusing. But if I go over here, see how these are smaller than these two right here? These are showing that they're for 3/16, whereas if I click this one, it's still saying, I still am only at annotative scale 1/4 inch. So it's showing it on the model space for that scale, but it won't show in the layout of a 3/16 inch because it's not set to. Hopefully that isn't too confusing. But going back to my drawing, this is 3/16. So it's going to show this and this dimension as well as those three titles that I have. So just be aware, whatever annotation scale you set to show for your dimensions and text, it'll show in that viewport. Now, if I wanted to change maybe something within here, like I obviously don't need both of my options of the beds and the furniture, they're overlapping, maybe even my doors. This is where I would have to freeze certain layers. So I would double click within this viewport, and then I would go under the Home tab to Layer Properties, and I would basically freeze under VP Freeze what I don't want to show. Like maybe I don't want the door 2 to not show. So I would hit the freeze, oops, not the freeze, but the VP freeze, meaning viewport freeze for that one. And maybe I don't want the furniture 2 to show. So I would VP freeze that one. Then when I close this, notice those two options are gone, as well as my doors. So double clicking double clicking outside of that, then I'm no longer in that floating model space. I'm now in the paper space, and I can make any more adjustments. Like, well, I do need to move this to basically underneath my drawing. I need to pull this line out, and notice what else. Remember what this viewport scale is? 3/16. I need to make sure this says 3/16. So if I click it, I do need to change that scale to actually say 3/16 of an inch equals a foot, which now it does. It's still going to be my floor plan, but if this was for a different drawing, I would change that as well. So now that I have my 2 sheet done, let's go back to the A sheet. Remember that title block? it still needs to be scaled down, right? The reason I didn't, because if I knew that I was going to create a B size, so by just copying this, that title block came in exactly to fit on the B size sheet because we made it to be for that size sheet. That's why I didn't change the scale on the A size, because then I would just have to scale it back up. So going back to the A size, I need to make this fit on here. Now, I did put on the D2L the scale factors so that you can do it automatically, but basically it's taking the height that it is divided by the height that I want it to be. So in this case, it would be 0.77. So when I go to Scale, right above Modify, I click that, I select my title block, I hit Enter. Let's say I want to scale from this bottom corner, so I select this as my base point, and then I say 0.77 and Enter. Now yes, it's kind of sticking off the side, but notice it is perfectly scaled top to bottom. So all I have to do, because this line around the edge will not show, only the title block, is I just need to go to Move, select my title block, hit Enter, and basically just move it with my ortho on so that it lines up with the edge of the paper. That line will not show, but the title block will. So that line stretching out the end, we don't even need to worry about it. It's off the paper anyway. So now my A size sheet is set to go, and my B size sheet is set to go. So let's create a C size sheet, because once you set one, you have less editing to do. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to say move or copy, I'm going to say move to the end and create a copy. So I'm going to make sure and check that, and I'm going to hit OK. Now I have my second one down here, so I'm going to right click again, rename, and call it my C size, and hit Enter. And now I need to go to Page Setup Manager. I've shown it in two different ways, so how about we do the third way of going to Output on the ribbon and go to Page Setup Manager. It brings up my C size, which is not the right size, so I go to Modify. I still want it to print to a PDF, so I'm not going to change that, but my paper size. I'm going to click down, and in this time, I'm going to select the Arc C Expand 24 by 18. Remember, I want it landscape, so I'm not going to select the 18 by 24. So I'm going to select that. It changes my preview, and I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to hit Close. Now my title block does not fit anymore because it's for a bigger size sheet, correct? So what I need to do is scale up this title block, but I also need to change the number because now this is sheet number 3. So I'm going to change that to be 3, hit Escape, get out of there. I didn't need to change anything else, but I need to scale this up. So I'm going to go to the Home tab, I'm going to hit Scale, I'm going to select the title block, I'm going to select this as the base point even though it's not quite in the corner, and the scale factor for this one happens to be 1.6, what is it, 1.636, Enter. Now yes, it's hanging off the edge, so I just need to move it into position again. So I go to Move, I select my title block, and I want to make sure this corner is exactly at this corner of the sheet of paper so that it fits exactly on the sheet, which it does, just not showing this part. Now I need to make the adjustments to my floor plan. So for the C size sheet, we were going to have this one be a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to select this again. I need to unlock it. I need to change my viewport scale to actually be 1/4 of an inch. So it will get bigger, not a lot, but a little bit. And now I need to pull those grips because more dimensions appeared. Remember how when we went to the drawing, it said annotation scale 1/4 inch? All of these dimensions happen to be that. So while I have it, I'm going to just go ahead and put it more in the center. I'm going to hit escape, and I can see all of my text, all of my dimensions. I'm still only seeing one option because I'm still freezing the other one, but I do need to change this. So I'm going to click this and change the scale to actually say 1/4 of an inch this time. It's just basically changing the attribute or the text. I can close out of there. I can pull this a little bit further so it lines up underneath the drawing, and I can hit escape. But for this one, I want to show more information. So actually, I am going to move all of this over to the left. Not too far. We don't want it hanging off the edge. But I want some other drawings to show here. In your assignment, you are going to actually change your bath to be a shower and then create some shower elevations. So going back to my model on this drawing, this is my XREF. Notice I cannot do anything with it. It is XREF'd into my drawing. If I want to make any changes at all, hitting escape, I do have to go to the original drawing. Let's say that on this drawing, maybe I wanted to make some adjustments to that shower. Right now, this is not much of a shower, is it? And in fact, you will be adding, well, basically a shower door and everything here. So if I wanted to add a shower door, maybe I wanted to do it with a line. I could start it like 2 inches away from that corner. I could have it come out exactly 45 degrees and say that I want it to be a 2-foot door. I would hit 2 feet and then escape. And then I can do my arc of start, center, end. And I can say start, center, and end. And I have my door in. But it wasn't showing previously, correct? Now it will show. And in fact, what if while I'm here, I wanted these two dimensions to show for that 3/16 viewport? Right now, they're just for the 1/4 inch. So if I select these two and go to my annotative scale and click, and then click this little box, then I can add, by hitting the add, my 3/16 inch viewport, hit OK, and then it is set to go, and hit OK again. Ooh, it looks like it's a little off the line for 3/16 of an inch, so I'm just going to move it slightly so that that line will show when it comes in. So now I've made my adjustments. I have to hit save. So even though I've made those adjustments, the other drawing doesn't know that I've done that. So I do have to go up here and hit save. And then when I go back to my other drawing where it's XREF'd in, notice what comes up. It says reload new example of the bedroom. I do need to make sure and click that. Notice you also can click here and compare your changes. It'll show all those changes in red that you've made, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just going to click that I want to reload. As soon as I do that, the door comes in, and we can't see the annotation scales here, but they are actually there. In fact, if I just click this, it's just going to show that it's an XREF. I can't make any adjustments here. It's an XREF. But if I go to my B size sheet, notice those two dimensions are now there that they weren't there before. So going to my C size sheet, basically all of those now show the door, okay? But I want to also add in some elevations for the shower. So going back to the model, like I was going to do originally, I'm going to create the layer that you're going to create for your assignment called Elevation Outline. which basically means it's going to be the outline of the shower elevations. That's why it's called elevate outline. You can probably get that right. So I'm going to make that current. I'm going to X out of here, and I'm basically going to draw the dimensions of my shower. Now you can create a 3-foot wide shower, a 3'6" wide shower, a small shower of 2'6". Mine in my head is 3'6", and it's 6 feet long. So I'm going to say 3'6", 8 feet. So now I've got one wall shown of that shower. I'm going to create another one just a little bit away from this one. I need to create some space in between there. So I'm going to click, and I'm going to say this one is 6 feet by 8 feet. And then I'm going to cheat, and I'm just going to say mirror this elevation over this one and hit enter. And then I can go in and make those drawings and hatch patterns to show what would be on those elevations, like you'll be doing. In this example, I'm not going to go through all that. I'm going to let you design these the way you want to, but I'm going to go back to the C size, and I want to show those at a different scale. This is a 1/4 inch. So if I wanted to show those at a 1/4 inch, yes, I could literally pull that out like so, and they are shown at that scale. I don't want them to show for that scale. So I'm going to bring my viewport back in, and I'm going to create a brand new viewport. I'm going to make sure I'm on the viewport layer, and then I'm going to go up here to where it says layout, and I'm going to click that, and I'm going to go to the left where it says rectangle for my viewports and click, and I'm basically going to make a rectangle. I'm going to click, let's put it here to here. I don't know if it's going to fit within this or not yet, but what I like to do is I like to double click within here and basically center what I want showing. So I want these elevations to show. Then I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to change my viewport scale to be 1/2 inch equals a foot, and it looks like it's just slightly bigger than my box. So I need to actually pull these grips to be a little bit bigger so it shows everything, and move it into a position on my sheet like so. I'm going to have option A here, and then I'm going to show option B down here of my partner's option for the elevations of that shower. But I do need to create a title underneath there. So I'm basically just going to go to copy and select the title that I have. I'm going to move it over here, put it underneath my elevations, like so. This is hanging off the edge, so I'm going to pull this in so it fits within my space. You don't want anything to go into that title block. And then I need to change the information here. So I need this to say shower elevations, elevations, maybe option A. The scale is actually for 1/2 inch, so I'm going to change the scale. And the number is the number 2, because it's the second drawing in my layout. So I would do the same thing down here for my other option. Create another layout, put it underneath, and copy this underneath for option B. Now notice if I want those to line up, it's going to conflict with this. So I would make sure and pull this back so they don't intersect each other. I can just see that ahead of time, that in order for this to line up with this one and then with this one, it would be right here. So just make sure that you clean up your drawings a little. But now I'm ready to actually create the last one, which is my D size. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to right click, say move or copy, move to the end, create a copy, hit OK, go to that one and right click and say rename, and call this D size and enter. And I need to do the same thing I've been doing with the others. I need to right click and go to Page Setup Manager. I need to modify the D size, so I'm going to hit Modify. And then I want to keep the same printer, but I need to change that paper size. So I'm going to click in here. I'm going to do this one to be Arc Expand D 36 by 24. That's a D size sheet. Oops, I didn't click it. It set that. I don't need to change any other parameters. So I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to hit Close. And my paper got bigger once again. Now, if I was starting from my B size, then the values that I gave you to scale it would be correct. But because I started from C size, it's a little different. It won't be 2.18, which is what it would be if it was from a B size. It would actually be 1.33. And the reason I know that is because if I take 24, which is the distance from here to here, divided by 18, the distance it is now, I get 1.33. So I'm going to go to Scale. I'm going to select that title block. I'm going to say that basically I want to start from here, and I'm going to scale it by 1.33, hit Enter. It's now the correct height, top to bottom. I just need to move it into place. So I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing, move it to the corner. I can see that my number isn't correct, so I'm going to click there and change the number to be 4. Hit Escape, and although it's hanging off the edge, it still fits perfectly over here. So now I just need to make the adjustments for my drawings again. Maybe move this to be, over here, and move this to be over here. And notice this one is still at 1/4 inch a foot. So if that's the scale I needed, I wouldn't need to change it. If I needed it to be a bigger scale, this is where I would do it. I would just go down here and change it. But basically, I now have my 4 sheets. I have the A size, number 1, with this viewport being 1/8 of an inch. I have the B size, number 2, with this viewport now being 3/16. It is reflected in the title block. I have the correct text and dimensions showing that I wanted. I have the C size, which shows all of the text and dimensions at 1/4 inch a foot for my viewport, and it says number 3. And this is now shown at 1/2 inch equals a foot. And then I have my D size, which shows basically what it did on the C, just on a bigger sheet of paper. So that covers all I needed to show you for Layouts and Page Setup Manager. I hope you have a lot of fun with your partner on creating some really unique designs for your elevations, and have some fun with it.